Like many watersheds around the world, the Apalachiola-Chattahoochee-Flint River Basin, one of the largest in the eastern United States, is being threatened by drought and human modification of river flow. The Chattahoochee River begins in North Georgia and flows south along the border with Alabama. The Flint River drains central Georgia and joins the Chattahoochee at the Florida line to form the Apalachiola River. Ecological, cultural, and economic activities in the Apalachiola River, Apalachiola Bay, and even the Gulf of Mexico are affected by historical and ongoing human changes to the natural system.
Well, the floodplain was flooded annually, usually in the late winter, early spring. And then the waters receded partly, but was still in the floodplain in the summer, and the swamps were still covered with water in the summer, historically. And by historically, I'm talking about before 1954, before the dam was constructed at the town of Chattahoochee, Jim Woodruff Dam. And in the summer, the swamps still had water in it, and then in the fall, the water would drain out of the swamps. But there was still water in the sloughs and streams that branched through the floodplain, sort of like the veins and arteries of the wetland system. And it was only in severe drought when the water was completely contained or almost completely contained in the main channel and had drained completely out of the floodplain.
The Apalachiola River watershed, including upland and lowland habitats, has been named a biodiversity hotspot by the Nature Conservancy, with over 1,500 native plant and animal species. Some of the more than 30 federally listed threatened and endangered species that inhabit the river basin, such as the Gulf sturgeon and purple bank climber mussel, have been negatively affected by drought and reduced water flow. In addition to the rich biological diversity, the floodplain supports Tupelo honey production. Apalachiola Bay supplies 90% of the oysters for the state of Florida and 10% of the oysters for the entire United States.
Well, starting in 1954, when Jim Woodruff Dam was constructed, there have been steady water level declines over the last half a century. The first water level declines were as a result of the dam. The dam trapped sediments, and then the water going over the dam was starved of sediments and scoured the bed and the banks below the dam. And that was predominant in the first few decades and in the first 40 miles downstream of the dam. Below that, there was dredging river-wide. The entire river was dredged. And woody debris was removed. Trees were removed from the banks and removed from the main channel for navigational purposes, to improve navigation. And they also did a river straightening in the lower reach, and that caused bed scour as well. So the total effect was channel erosion that widened and deepened the channel, but the floodplain elevations didn't change. So for the same amount of flow, you would have a lower water level because the channel was larger and it was carrying more of the flow. And we don't have a problem in the fall and winter. It's the spring and summer where we've really seen some big declines in flow. Some of that is from agricultural water use in the area that has so many center pivot irrigation rigs in southwest Georgia. And some of that is from municipal and industrial water use. The primary center of that is Atlanta's water use in the northern basin. And some is from the Corps of Engineers regulation of large federal reservoirs. And there are, in addition to the 5 federal reservoirs, there's another 25,000 either man-made or man-managed reservoirs in the basin of all sizes, from small farm ponds up to medium-sized water supply reservoirs up to large federal reservoirs. Some of the highest density of dams in the southeastern United States is in Georgia and in this basin.
The river brings in nutrients into the bay which cause increases in the phytoplankton. If you look at the physical structure of the bay, the reefs in the eastern sections are particularly productive because of the physical components, namely that it's a quiet area where a lot of the nutrients go, causing phytoplankton to bloom, and the phytoplankton are eaten by the oysters and they grow fast. The oysters in Apalachiola grow faster probably than anywhere in the world. Mm-hmm. It's the ideal place for an oyster, but if this river flows stop flowing long enough, they can't grow past an inch or so, if that.
The bag limit was almost impossible to catch unless you had, you know, that's 20 bags per person on a boat. Me and my son together wouldn't catch 20. And sometimes boats that had 3 or 4 people on them wouldn't catch the bag limit for one person. So that's a big difference.
So when a drought occurs, which they do naturally, you have ups and downs to the system, which is good. The natural variability between droughts and floods is what all of these organisms are adapted to. The problem is that the increased drought, together with water removal from upland areas, has caused a change in the drought structure. And as the droughts get longer and longer, it's like taking a rubber band and stretching it. And the resilience of the system goes like this under natural conditions: drought, flood, flood. But when you extend the drought, if you extend that rubber band a little bit, it'll go to a point where the resilience is gone, it'll snap, and then you have a whole new system coming into play with a lot of species dropping out, productivity going down, and it's no longer the miracle of productivity that the bay once was.
Growing evidence also suggests that the river may play an important role in supporting offshore ecosystems and fisheries. During periods of high flow, the nutrient-rich freshwater plume emanating from the river generates a phytoplankton bloom that exists hundreds of miles over the West Florida shelf, directly over important grouper spawning grounds. This feature, as seen in satellite images, is known as the Green River phenomenon. The Green River may be particularly important for larval fishes, providing a food resource during the critical early life stages in an otherwise low productivity system.